Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, where's the medical marijuana bill? Also, the V-Team takes a look at prison financing struggles. And what do Republican leaders think of the Derek Chauvin conviction? All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by Josh Moon, investigative reporter and columnist with APR, and Rusty Glover, former state senator and a Republican stalwart, joining our show today. How are y'all?
Very well, very well.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Been a busy week in politics, nationally and locally. One of the things that I think we should acknowledge is that a jury on Tuesday found former Minnesota police officer Derek Chauvin guilty of the murder and manslaughter in the George Floyd case. Those ripples of that case are fanning out all over the nation. But here in Alabama, for at least a day or so, the Republicans remain silent. And Josh, you and I talked about this earlier, and we just didn't understand why there was nothing said about this whole case that has rocked the nation.
Yeah, I'll say that that Tommy Tuberville, surprisingly enough to me and to a lot of people, did have some very fair and some very good comments about police reform and kind of addressed it. But you're right, it was silence at the state level from a lot of people, and I think and having talked to a lot of Democratic lawmakers, those guys that some of them consider their friends, that they work up close with a lot in the legislature. It was hurtful for them not to hear anything from them because it's obvious the emotion that was felt by so many people, and you can look at it and tell it was genuine emotion from a lot of black citizens across the country after that verdict, and to recognize that and you knew very well that those guys were watching this because they had press releases and other statements about Maxine Waters and other things that came out in the lead up to this verdict announcement. So you knew that they were watching. To not say anything, I think it sends this message of division. I want to say it almost tells you I know I should say something, but I don't for political reasons, for whatever the reasons are. It just I think it helps keep a divide there that's very hurtful.
Rusty, I don't expect you to speak for everybody in the Republican Party, but I think, is it possible that because this case was tied so closely to Black Lives Matters, and there are some Republicans that view Black Lives Matter movement negatively, or is there some other thing I'm missing here?
Well, I think, it was very, clear cut. It was a quick verdict. The police officer was found guilty by a jury of his peers. Yes, they found drugs in the system of George Floyd, but the jury felt like, and I think most of America felt like, this would not have resulted in his death had there not been a knee to the neck. And right. So it was very clear cut. So I don't think it was necessary to just give commentary. It was such a clear cut case that I don't think that there's a lot of people. I do hear, I was listening to a local talk show in Mobile, and an elderly black man who had lived through the Jim Crow years, the segregation, and he was asking a rhetorical question: why is the criminal shot by police so much more important and gets so much more attention than the thousands of innocent victims that are murdered by the scores each and every day? He emphasizes how the mothers of those victims hear about the millions of dollars that are going to those mothers and families of people who were resisting arrest, fighting with police, trying to grab a gun. It's not all the unarmed person being killed by police. It's not always the case. And they're very upset why their lives are so much more important than those that are on local TV for 48 hours and then they're forgotten about. You have these poor families are on local television begging people to go contribute to the GoFundMe page to help pay for the bearing of their, and then all the attention is going to these incidences with police. It's pointed out over and over again, 7,000 black homicides against black persons in the United States each and every year. But only two people per month are involved with police. And so I think the narrative pretty much pushes us towards, it's the other way around. And that's what you generally hear.
Josh, you want to respond to that? We're going to run out of time. But
yeah, I think when we're talking about criminals versus police, I think people have a little higher expectation of your police department, and that's the reason why that we have the expectation that police are not going to gun down innocent, unarmed people, and even criminals for that matter. You have an expectation that jaywalking and carrying drugs and that sort of thing is not a death sentence immediately, and I think what people are upset about is this systemic racism that is present in law enforcement and in the American justice system that has prevailed over a number of years, that has led to the mass incarceration of a number of black citizens here for crimes and oftentimes that white people walk free for or that are overlooked. And I think that's the thing that is so important and is what's driving this, is that you've had a buildup of 100 or 200 years of this over the course of time. And people are tired of this. They have been broken, and this is the result of being oppressed and being shoved down to the bottom in this system for so long. And that's the reason why it's getting attention, is because for so many decades and decades, it got zero attention.
Well, I think go ahead, Rusty.
It has been for so many years getting zero attention, but of the hundreds and hundreds of traffic stops and resisting arrests that do not lead to a death or a shooting.
They're not supposed to.
Each and every day.
They're not supposed to lead to a death. That's the
right.
point.
And that's right. That's right. But anytime that this happens that's too many times to happen. And I agree with that.
We're going to have to cut it right there because we're running out of time. All right. We'll pick up on something on the other side. All right. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and opinion.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Your career isn't a job, it's a journey. Your next job could lead to bigger things, and you're in charge of how fast and how far you want to go. At alabamaworks.com, you can connect with employers and start working right now. Then chart your path forward with training and career planning tools. That next paycheck is great, but it's only the beginning. Start a great success story at alabamaworks.com.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. In June, last June, there was a mostly peaceful protest that took place in Huntsville. All of a sudden, police officers from the Huntsville Police Department, from the Madison Sheriff's Office, and from Aaliyah descended on the group in full riot gear. It looked like something out of Manhattan or New York City or the inner cities of Chicago, Josh. It went viral. And we at the time, those of us who saw the video, understood that those officers were spraying people with pepper spray or some kind of something like that. We also saw evidence of them shooting rubber bullets and also beanbag bullets, which are less lethal, but they're very harmful. Now, they denied that to us as reporters. They denied it happened. And now a report has come forward from Huntsville saying, yes, they did do this. They even broke their own protocol. This is the kind of thing that when you look at what happened to George Floyd, we go, there is a problem with how policing is occurring. These police officers, they were looking at people who had bottles of water, and they shot them with rubber bullets and bean bags. Shot one guy in the face. I mean, that's not policing. That's not policing.
No, and the report was fairly critical of the way the policing was handled. And I'll say, from what they released in the report and what they were able to find out in the report, which was fairly limited because 0 of the Huntsville Police Department officers were allowed to speak to them. The Madison County Sheriff's Department did not cooperate in any way, and Aaliyah refused to cooperate in any way.
Well, I tell you, Aaliyah's got a boss. Her name is Kay Ivey. She ought to haul Hal Taylor in and ask him to fess up to what really happened there. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
Because what they asked for in this investigation, which was led by a couple of attorneys, Jack Sharman being one, which we're pretty familiar with from the Bentley case a few years ago, the Bentley impeachment. What they were asking for was body camera footage, which in most instances, in a lot of states, is deemed public record. That it's unclear in Alabama whether it's public record or not, but they wanted that. They refused to hand it over. So the Huntsville Police Department said they did not use any rubber bullets. Now they did have one officer who's no longer with the department that was caught on camera saying he was using rubber bullets. Right. And then they did have an officer who fired a beanbag at a person's head and said that he had done so on his body camera. But
we saw people that had the bruises and the cuts from those.
They blamed all that on Madison County Sheriff's deputies. And there was a complete overreaction to what was taking place. They fell for, I assume, Facebook rumors and other things, and they marched out there like they were going to, like there was an invading army coming in, and that's the way they kind of treated those people, and it was just so over the top and so egregious for Huntsville and for that small protest that was taking place. It was so crazy, and I think the report kind of reflects that, and we'll see if there are any changes. I'm kind of skeptical on that.
I mean, like Rusty, there were some protests in Mobile. There were protests in Montgomery. They didn't get out of hand. Ones in Birmingham got pretty rough. Still, they were able to calm those things down without great incident. Ones in Birmingham were pretty bad, but Rusty, there are other cities about the size of Huntsville. They just didn't have that.
Well, I feel like that. I was watching the House action on the House floor the other day, and one of the representatives from Democrat representatives from Mobile, the former county commissioner, Mayor Sam Jones, came down, and usually a lot of the filibustering that goes on is silly talk and just wasting time, and it's really kind of to the outsider it looks absolutely ridiculous, but he had some very good points to make, from his experience as mayor and dealing with issues such as these, that he said that we should be putting more emphasis on patrolmen that are patrolling the neighborhoods where a lot of these problems are taking place, have a relationship between the police officer and the community. And more of this can be put forth. And I think you could stymie some of these problems before they happen. And these are the kind of things we need to look into as far as building trust between the people of the communities and the police officers. Because 99%, you hear all kind of numbers. What percentage are the good cops and the bad cops? But it's so overwhelming. It's such a small number. Policemen are being criticized. They're being watched more than any other profession, more than teachers. I was a teacher. We didn't get watched and criticized like police officers today.
And look, I agree with you. There are more good officers on the job than there are bad. It's like my grandmother used to say, one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch, unfortunately. But we got to move on. You brought up something going down to the State House on April 9th. Governor Ivey let expire the mask mandates and other social distancing type of mandates that were put in place throughout the state. However, still at the State House, you have to wear a mask. You can't just go in the State House. They have mandates on who can enter the building, how many people can enter the building. These are the same mandates that many of my Republican friends were hollering against, but now they're still at the State House. I mean, shouldn't we free the State House and let everybody in, let the lobbyists in, let the public in? I mean, free the State House. I mean, come on, guys. No, it would be ridiculous, right? But
maybe what we should do is create some sort of a system where people have to prove that they've been vaccinated before they go in. And
we banned that already. We banned the.
Listen, it's my understanding that they want to carry forward with this appointment-only State House going forward into the future.
Well, they get a lot more done without lobbyists there and without the public there, but I'm not sure it's good, Rusty.
Yeah, I don't know that you want this group doing anything in secret.
So, Josh, where is medical marijuana? Where's that legislation?
Oh, the legislation. Yeah.
I thought you were no, not where you're hiding it. Where's the weed?
Hey, man, that's none of your business. It's in the Rules Committee waiting to get out onto the House floor. I believe it will come out at some point. I believe there's an agreement there to get it out.
And free the hops, free the weed. Okay. We'll be right back. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
If you've been working, you've already proven yourself in ways you may not even notice. Managing your time, communicating effectively, and working as part of a team are key skills that employers value. At alabamaworks.com, you can find out how to build on your experience to up your game and get the job you really want because it's out there. Start your new success story at alabamaworks.com.
Sponsored by Alabama Works, the Alabama Broadcasters Association, and this station.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. A story that we dug into several months ago is where back in January, a group called the Rule of Law Defense Fund. Is that right, Josh?
Yeah, RLDF.
Okay.
Yes.
That is led by Attorney General Steve Marshall, Alabama's Attorney General. It is an arm of the Republican Attorney Generals Association. Now, that group funded robocalls to get people to come to Washington, D.C. on January 6th, and they promoted this. We will march to the Capitol and call on Congress to stop the steal. That was part of the robocall. They were calling people there to march to the Capitol. Now, that has come under scrutiny. We've had several people from RAGA resign, and recently the finance director did, citing that RAGA was now going to be turned over to the man who authorized those robocalls. Steve Marshall said that he was going to do an internal investigation. That was back January 8th, Josh. We haven't heard anything. We've called and emailed Mr. Marshall several times. He's refused to answer any questions about the internal investigation. What do you make of it, Josh?
Well, first of all, I think the last person you want to do in your investigation is Steve Marshall, apparently, since he can't get to the bottom of what happened in his own organization. It's pretty cut and dried. I think that we knew Eddie Burkhalter dug into this for us a lot at APR, and just looking at what he reported and how he. It was all kind of laying there, it's obvious what took place. They funded the robocalls and helped organize the protest that led to the insurrection. And then everybody tried to run from it. Steve Marshall has claimed he didn't know anything about it, which nobody believes. And so now they're turning on each other inside of this thing. And that's to be expected. Yeah. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, honestly, that followed these stories.
Much ado about nothing or a big deal, Rusty? I mean, we really don't normally are affected by RAGA down here, but our own Steve Marshall is in the middle of this story.
Yeah, I understand. I can understand the concern, but after the Maxine Waters statements this week and LeBron James, I think this kind of pales in comparison to the call to action.
When did LeBron get elected to? When did LeBron take office?
He is listened to by more people than any politician pretty much in America. So what he says means quite a bit. And I think
but
people
not as much as an attorney general
of a state. I would say that more people in the state of Alabama know who LeBron James is than Attorney General Marshall, for sure.
I mean,
they listen to
notoriety or fame is not the same thing as what you're supposed to do in terms of the law.
Yeah, I understand, but these people that went to Washington, I knew several people that went. There was a bus from Mobile that went. They turned around and came back when there was trouble. They saw trouble, and they were not there to cause trouble. They were there because they wanted to show the members of Congress how they felt about the election. Of course, they read about, they hear about the thousands of people who were dead voters, the courts in Pennsylvania changing law prior to the election, the secret vote counts after the poll watchers were dismissed. It just goes on and on. The hundreds of witnesses that have signed affidavits saying that they saw these things.
Okay, we're not going to relitigate that. We're not going to relitigate that. That's all right. That's all right. We're not going to do it. But
there's been like 40 court cases and none of those.
Well, they did come. They did come out in Pennsylvania today. One of the guys that did the investigation in Pennsylvania, this is in print, it's easy enough to find, and said, this is a Republican who said there was voter fraud in Pennsylvania, and they had the proof, and it was Republicans. And that is his statement. And he said, doesn't matter who it is, it was still voter fraud. So, yeah, okay, there was voter fraud in Pennsylvania, according to the Republican lawmaker who was looking into voter fraud. But I want to move on. Financing for Alabama's prison has basically hit a brick wall, Rusty. The Core Civic is struggling to find the financing. Barclays Capital, which was going to run the funding, has dropped out. What happens next?
Well, it's definitely a problem. I think a lot of people in the state do not realize of what the problem is. I toured 4 prisons a couple of years ago, and it's some deplorable conditions. People think, oh, they're air conditioned and watching TV. That's not the case in our state prisons. I saw one place where they had an old cannery where they had, I think 300 or 400 prisoners and like 2 guards watching them. It was a very dangerous situation.
Yeah.
The courts have ruled that we have to do something, or the feds are going to start releasing prisoners. And this happened in California. I remember years ago, I would speak at civics groups and I'd mention this and how we must act, and they would just roll their eyes. There's just not a lot of concern amongst the people. The legislature is going to have to act before something happens that the people of the state is going to regret greatly.
Well, I think you're right, and they do. And I think now, if the financing falls through, Josh, the legislature is going to have to pass some type of legislation, some type of bond deal. The problem is they've never been able to do this before. What makes us think they can do it now?
Well, I'm not sure that they're going to be able to get anything done. But I'll tell you that I think Rusty hit on something that's a pretty big problem here in terms of how they're selling this. And that is to say there are 300 or 400 people in a room with 2 guards watching them. And the plan then to fix that is to make the room bigger. I think that's where a lot of people have a problem with this, especially on the Democratic side, which is to say, this is what the DOJ is saying to us, is that you don't have enough guards and your health care and other things are really lacking here, in addition to your prisons being overcrowded. And so I think what they're wanting everybody to do is to come up with a more comprehensive approach. And I think if you do that, you could have some Democratic support, which would really help you in terms of numbers and getting something passed. But they're never going to be able to pass it in terms of just passing a 3-prison deal like they have on the table. I don't think that's ever going to work.
Well, I think they're going to have to, as Rusty said, they're going to have to do something. What it is, we don't know. They've had several bites at the apple. I mean, if this deal falls through, Governor Ivey is not going to be irresponsible and try to push something through that's not going to work. But hopefully she can work with the legislature to find something that might be possible. But we'll see. All right, we're going to have to wrap it up. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.